The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, their headquarters in Tarzana, California. Today is Friday. It is September 21st, 2012. Very exciting day here in Los Angeles. As you probably have heard on the news, we have a space shuttle circling any moment now. We don't know if we're actually going to have view of it from the building that we're in, but I'll keep you posted. If we go to a lengthy commercial, it's because we've all run up to the roof to see the space shuttle. It's one of those once-in-a-lifetime kind of things, right? I'm actually hoping that my son at his school, if they get a view, I don't think that they know, there's several landmarks that it's going to tour around this morning. You know, it's one of those geek kind of things. I get excited about it. In any case, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of fun stuff that we're going to be talking about. For the next 2 hours, we're going to be here with you live talking about autism and autism spectrum disorders and how we can all be as efficient and as effective as we can possibly be working with an individual on the spectrum, or if you are on the spectrum, and I know that we've already had one person write in this morning saying that they're watching and that they have Asperger's, trying to help you to sort out how you can reach your fullest potential. One of the things that a lot of you had written in and said was, you're leaving us out of this. You're talking about kids. What about the teenagers and the adults that have autism or an autism spectrum disorder who would like information? And we're trying to make sure that you know how included you are and how much we appreciate you being here with us. You know, especially those of you who are a little bit older on the spectrum, I have to tell you how much hope you give all of us who have younger kids to see you guys using technology and getting things done and overcoming obstacles. It's really very amazing. You are an inspiration to us. So of course you are welcome here, and I hope that we can help you to get answers to questions that you have, because that's really what we're about here. This is an interactive show. I sit here as the conduit. I'm the host, but I'm not an expert in anything. Literally not an expert in anything. I am an autism mom. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, quite profoundly affected, I would also say. He had the kind of autism that he regressed into it, had been speaking in sentences, and lost virtually all of his verbal communication skills by the time he started ABA at the age of 3. And gratefully, thankfully, he did start ABA at the age of 3, and we saw tremendous progress. He's now 9 years old. He is in a completely included 4th grade class and doing very well, light of my life. But it was a lot of hard work for him. I've never met anybody who worked as hard as he did and as he does. And it was a journey for us as parents, figuring out what did we need to do to get him access to the people and the therapies and a wide range of other things so that he could make the progress that he did make and continues to make. And it was difficult. We were not pioneers, though. We had a group of parents who came before us who helped us and pointed us to the experts so that we got the help that we needed. And I can remember thinking, man, how does everybody else do this? If we hadn't had this, what would we have done and where would our child be now? And it literally sends a cold shiver up my spine. So I'm here to be a conduit for you. I've been given access on your behalf to a whole bunch of experts, a whole bunch of people who know a great deal about this journey of autism and autism spectrum disorders. And I can, on your behalf, ask as many questions on whatever topics. So I'm asking you to participate and tell us what you'd like to hear more about, or what questions would you like to ask, or what comments would you like to give about things that have worked for you. It's really meant to be a give and a take. And there are lots of different ways that you can participate. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com, then you will see that there's a box that has me talking, and next to that is a box that right now is empty, and above it, it says Shannon is answering right now. That is an open forum for you to write anything that you would like. You hit enter and it shows up magically here on my screen. I have the ability to show it. I don't show personal information. So for the person who wrote in and told us that they have Asperger's, you included your name, and I'm glad to know your name, but I won't be showing that to our viewers so that you guys can stay anonymous. By the way, you don't have to log in to type into that box. We don't ask for your credit card number. We don't ask you to have a lengthy sign-in process. You're not going to be spammed. We don't even know who you are. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that a change from how things normally are? So feel free to write whatever you want. You can just tell us where you're watching from or what kinds of things you're interested in. If you have a question, though, we can talk about it here, and we're going to have a wonderful guest at the top of the next hour who can really answer some pretty amazing questions that are way above my ability to even go there. But I'll sit here and nod my head. Of course, I'm talking about Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who will be with us at 11 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. Now, if you're watching autism-live.com and it says rebroadcast, because we're here for 2 hours a day live from 10 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time, but the rest of the 24-hour cycle, what we do is show you recently recorded episodes of the live show, so that you can see everything that's been going on in the last week here if you've missed an episode. But it plays on an endless loop and you can't pause it, right? And many of you wrote it and said, sometimes I need to be able to pause, or I need to go back and watch something again, or sometimes I have to fast forward. I only have 10 minutes in which I can watch, and I need to get to this particular topic, this particular segment, or this particular expert. Well, there are lots of ways in which you can do that. And I want to remind you too, if you're watching us in rebroadcast, there are lots of ways that you can get in touch with us as well. So let's start out with email. You could be emailing us anytime, day or night, wherever you are in the world, no matter what channel you're watching us on, or if we're live or rebroadcast. So there's the email address. We hope you'll participate. What we'll do is get your email uncovered on the next available live show, and we'll send you a typewritten response, either from us or from the expert that we consulted to answer your questions. So feel free to talk to us via email. You can also phone into the show. We have a phone line that if you're calling during the live show, you can be patched in and you and I can have a conversation right now. Or if you're calling us after hours, there are people standing by during business hours to talk to you, business hours Pacific Standard Time. Or you can leave us a message at any point and we'll get back to you as soon as we're back in the studio. You can also Skype with us. We have Skype capability, whether it's local or around the world. Isn't that wonderful that technology allows us to do that? So feel free to Skype in with us. You can Skype in audio only, or you can Skype in with picture if you have camera capability on your computer. And you and I can be talking with our expert in live time, and the folks at home can even see you, which is a wonderful thing. You can also converse with us via Facebook. We have a new Facebook page, and we appreciate it if while you're there, if you'll give us a like, but there's a lot of information and some of our past highlights that are on the Facebook page, and other things that are going on in the world of autism. And we always put the question of the day on Facebook for you to interact with us in that way and interact with each other, which is really a lovely thing. I love how you guys support each other on Facebook. That's a wonderful, and we do ask that everything be supportive when you're talking to other parents on Facebook. And you can also participate with us on Twitter. And if you will follow us, we will follow you. How's that for a deal on Twitter? And you can answer the question of the day there, suggest topics, whatever you would like on Twitter. I mentioned that we are on Autism-Live, but we we're available on other sites which allow you to pause, rewind, fast forward, search a topic. One of those sites that we are featured on is blip.tv. When you go to our Blip channel, you can type in a keyword. If you want to know about toileting, you can type that in. If you want to watch all the interviews with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, you can. If you want to know more about ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, then you really want to be watching Evelyn Gould when we've had her on. She covers a wide variety of topics. So you can check those out on blip.tv. It's all free. But you can also check us out on our very own YouTube channel. And while you're on the YouTube channel, if you see something that you like, feel free to share it, either your Facebook or email it to somebody that you're working with to say, hey, this is exactly the thing I was talking about, or isn't this interesting, whatever it is. But in that way, you send our information to more people, and hopefully we can help more people get the answers to the questions that they have, those burning questions. You can download us for free on iTunes and archive all those episodes, and we are also available on Ustream. So all of those different ways. And hey, while you're on iTunes, we love reviews on iTunes. Good, bad, and different. But if you say something about us on iTunes, you know what it actually does is that it helps. iTunes really promotes their shows via how many people review them. So if you like the show or you don't like the show, I don't know how much you want to help us if you don't like the show, but if you do like the show and you want more people to be able to see it, that's a way that you can get the message out there, is give us a review, and it actually bumps us up in the ratings on the show. So we love it when you review us on iTunes. But we hope that whatever way is best for you, that you participate with us, because we find it very reinforcing when you guys write in. Even if you write in and say, hey, I wish you would do this instead. We change. We change as a result of that. So definitely be a part of the conversation. It's meant for you. So participate. Okay, we like to start every morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take one word, one phrase, one anagram, and try to figure out what exactly are we talking about. We know that autism is an intensive jargon journey, and you start it behind, right? You go, I have no idea what you're talking about, and it's a time in your life when you say, I really want to know what you're talking about, so help me out. And a lot of times the experts, they'll give you a definition, and it's worse than the word in terms of knowing what the heck it means. So we give you the word of the phrase, the anagram, we give you the actual definition, and sometimes we make fun of it. And then we give you a working definition that hopefully puts it in a little better context so that you know what it is you're dealing with the individual that you need to apply it to, whether it's you or someone else. Okay, so today's phrase, we've been talking about prompts all this week. So today's phrase is a textural prompt. And we'll take a look at the actual definition first. An extra stimulus in the form of text presented along with the discriminative stimulus, which increases the likelihood of a correct response. Okay. It's not the worst definition, but if you're new to autism and you go in and say, oh, it's an extra stimulus, presented along with the discriminative stimulus, what are we talking about here? Well, we're always trying to set ourselves and our kids up for success. And we're going to do whatever we can to get them to success, because when they get to success, we get to reinforce them. And that means that they're going to be more likely to do the behavior again and again and again. We talk about ABA here a lot. It's not the only thing we talk about, but since it works for all of us, not just people on the spectrum, but it does work for people on the spectrum, whether they're 3 years old or 103, ABA has been shown to be effective. And I don't think we have a person who's 103 on the spectrum, but there are people that are 100 years of age that ABA has been effective with. And maybe we have people that are 103, they just weren't diagnosed. Autism is not old enough to have been diagnosed at that point. I digress. In any case, principle number one of ABA is that in order for any behavior to be maintained, it has to be rewarding. We only do things again and again and again that have some sort of payoff for us, some sort of paycheck involved in it. Sometimes it's a little convoluted. We got to look to see what the paycheck is, but there's always a paycheck, and it's usually pretty immediate. So when we want to increase a certain behavior in whoever we're working with, including ourselves, we have to give a payoff, a paycheck. And sometimes, it's hard because you can't give the paycheck until the behavior has happened. So how do we teach the behavior? Well, we're going to give lots of help and support to teach the behavior. So whatever it is, if let's say that, for instance, we've got a child in a classroom who we need for them to initiate and ask questions and raise their hand. We want to increase that behavior. And we're hoping to get that to happen. And we've talked to the child about it beforehand, but now we're in the real situation. And there's other kids sitting there, and the teacher is teaching, and the child is sitting there. And we'd really love to run over and whisper in their ear and say, hey, you got to be raising your hand more often, right? But that's not going to work. That's going to be intrusive. So we might have a little card that says hand. And if the other kids in the class see it, they're not going to do a big reaction to it, but I can hold up a little text box that says hand to the child, and it's a cue. It's an extra stimulus in the form of text presented along with the discriminative stimulus, which, in this case, I'm not giving a specific discriminative stimulus other than the teacher saying, does anybody have any questions? That would be our discriminative stimulus. And I hold up the picture saying hand, and hopefully that's going to encourage, oh, right, I'm supposed to raise my hand. So they do. And then we make sure that they get some reinforcement for it, okay? So that's really what we're talking about, our working definition, using a word or a phrase to guide the child through the desired response. And of course, the word or the phrase is printed in this case. Yesterday, we were talking about a vocal prompt, in which case it would be said. But in this case, sometimes a textural prompt is really the thing that's going to get the job done. It's going to fit the circumstances and help the child to understand what to do. Now, is it always? I mean, clearly we have children who don't know how to read yet. There's a certain point at which they, although sometimes we can still use a textural prompt, because then we've explained to them, this means apple. And so when I hold this up, you're going to pick up the apple, and can be a way in which we're speeding the decoding and learning how to read. But the purpose of using a textural prompt is not to teach a child how to read. The purpose of it is to help ensure that they're going to get the right response. So in general, we're only going to use it with kids that already know how to read. But there might be some circumstances where we wouldn't do that. So I think about, way back when my dad had a stroke when I was in college, and he had aphasia afterwards, that he just couldn't access the part of his brain to find certain specific words, and he was having to relearn how to speak. And I can remember him working with his speech therapist, and one of the things that she said was, as we're reteaching him how to label things, let's have text cards for things that come up that he requests and put it next to them. And my mother kind of went overboard with it. So everything, like if we would ask for something, I remember coming home from college one summer and to visit, and I needed an alarm clock. And so I had asked my mother if she had an alarm clock, or did I need to go buy one that I could, or could I borrow one? And she had one, and I got up one morning and she'd already left for work, and sitting on the counter was a clock, and she had written out a card that said clock with an arrow to it, because she'd been doing it for my dad so much. And I, of course, didn't need that, but my dad would often, sometimes he would just fill in the wrong word. So everything was orange juice or umbrellas. So he would sit there and say to you, I want an umbrella, but he didn't mean umbrella. He might mean a cup of coffee. And so what we would do is, when we were bringing the coffee, we would hold up a card and he would say coffee, because it would remind him. And he got better at saying the right word. So you can see there are multiple ways in which we can use a textural prompt. And And as shocking as it may seem, there are some kids that respond better to text than they do to something vocal. And certainly there are circumstances where a textural prompt would work better because of the circumstances, like school. Okay, but a prompt is something that we do to help somebody to get to the right answer. We always want to be fading our prompts as soon as possible, but never so soon that we go back to not having success. The prompt helps us get to success. Okay, hopefully I haven't confused you too much. In any case, we always have a question of the day for you. The question of the day is meant to get you thinking and participating, and hopefully you'll answer this on Twitter or Facebook or email us, whatever works best for you. But here it is. How much time do you spend worrying about financial issues? You know, they did I hope you guys are all familiar with the Ian Project. That the Kennedy Krieger Institute has something that they're doing where they're taking data from parents and caregivers and individuals on the spectrum, and you can log in. It's called the Ian Project, IAN. You can find it online, and you can answer questions, and they will put research in from time to time where they want your input, and you get a little alert in your email box that says, we'd like your input, because they're trying to have it be as easy as possible for parents to participate. So it's the biggest set of studies ever asking parents and caregivers and individuals on the spectrum, you know, in different topics at different times depending on what they're studying. But when the first study came out, after they did the first initial blast out to parents and saying, please participate, we answered a whole host of questions in lots of different areas, and they came back and talked about stress, oddly enough, because stress apparently, as if we don't know, is a part of this journey. And but what was very interesting in the research was to break down what were the things that were most stressful. And I think everyone was shocked that the idea of our child having challenging behavior while it was stressful, it wasn't in like the top 3. And not knowing what our child's outcome was going to be, very stressful, wasn't in the top 3. The things that were in the top 3 were financial concerns, figuring out how to pay for what you have to pay for, and having to fight for services. Those were the main top 2 things that were already there that probably could be attained, and there might even be funding available, but that you had to overcome so much to be able to get them. And I think the third one was being able to maintain a relationship and keep the whole family together. Yeah. Stressful stuff. And sometimes financial issues affect those other 2. So really, really interesting. So how much time, I think it's good for us to talk about it and say, this is how much time, and let the world know this is one of the biggest concerns, unfortunately, that a family has to face when we're looking at autism, is financial issues. Often financial crisis. Okay, so we are going to check in just a little while on Facebook. Now's a great time to be writing in with your answer. We always have a topic of the day, and I'm sure that you can guess by now that our topic this entire week has been funding. We've been talking about funding and how it's stressful, and it's been a very busy week, so we haven't spent as much time talking about it as I would have liked to have, but I hope if you have individual questions that you'll write in, and we can talk about where you're being hung up. I always think of, and I've been asking you guys for a while, that we know that there are certain things that do work for our kids, and of course the big scientific, we know that ABA has been scientifically proven to be effective with all of our kids on the spectrum, no matter where they are. If it's an individual who is 25 and just needs some help and support with being able to negotiate social networking, and, you know, texting and maintaining relationships and having a social life that includes all this technology, we know that ABA is helpful with that, and progress can be made. And that we know for a child who's 2, 2 who is behind already in language and other development, we know that ABA is effective for that child, and literally, you know, everything in between and outside that, it's effective. But it's expensive and it's time consuming in some cases. And I always like to say to you guys, you know, what's holding you back? What can I help you to figure out so that you can find a way to get to the funding? And you know, some of you guys have written in, and we're trying to help you find the way, because I don't think any of you should have to reinvent the wheel. That's too much time. You don't have that much time or energy. Time and energy has to be put into what you're trying to accomplish. So we're going to talk more about funding today, but feel free to ask questions or to provide answers and suggestions. And some of the things that we have going on in particular on the show today, we've got an academic tip that's going to be coming up in just a few minutes. I've been promising that we were going to cover pull-outs and push-ins in the academic setting, so we're taking that on today. And in a bigger way than we did the other day. We're going to go through our viewer responses to the questions of the day from the last couple of days, because there were a lot of things about funding that I want to get to. And then at 11 o'clock, we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He's got some really exciting things to share with you and some different research things that we're also going to talk about. But as always, we will pitch everything else out the window to talk to you and to answer your questions. We have a schedule, we have a plan, but the plan is nowhere near as important as what you guys want to talk about. So don't feel like you're hijacking the show. Ask questions. That's what we live for, really, genuinely. Okay, we're going to take a break, and as we go to break, we have a new segment that we're going to show from time to time on the show called Mission Possible. Because when a lot of us went in for the first time and heard that our child was diagnosed with autism, we didn't always get good information, right? I know I didn't. And a lot of us have heard along the way all about things that our kids can't do. And for those of you who are watching on the spectrum, I know you probably have encountered people who have told you, or either told you what you couldn't do, told you what their expectations of you were that were very low, or that through their actions they let you know that they were not seeing you but an expectation that was false. And I think it's important always for us to talk about what's possible. And so we have a new segment called Mission Possible, where we drop in on a family and see what's happening for them, hopefully to lift all of us up and remind us how much hope there is and how much our kids can do. So take a look at this week's Mission Possible.
Can you say hello? Say hello.
AJ?
Stop crying.
AJ, let's eat. Can you eat, AJ? Let's eat, son. Have a fry. My understanding of autism was very limited.
He would lick tires on cars, windows, you name it. And so we went to the 13-month checkup, and I remember our pediatrician, he said, well, he probably has autism. There's nothing you can do about it. Come back in a year when he's 3.
Our initial understanding of what the ABA program was basically all we picked up from this clinic in San Antonio.
He didn't pick up any signs the entire 8 months that he was there. I think the difference came when we changed vendors.
We were very impressed with the way that CARD actually gathered data to be able to quantify the progress that he was making. They have a curriculum that they follow that's tailored to each child. They were identifying AJ's strengths and weaknesses.
We were finally starting to see real progress.
Good, AJ. Here's eggs.
The first thing CARD did for us was, I remember the first time AJ said, "Mommy, I want you." And that was the most wonderful thing ever. There's hope.
Yeah,
That's when I knew that there was hope. I never thought that AJ would be able to say that. It was like a gift from God. It was so fantastic.
With CARD, we got him enrolled in a private school.
And he was in a typical classroom. He would go from activity to activity. He could sit when he was supposed to sit. He could be around typical kids. The goal is for CARD to work themselves out of a job. It's for AJ to be in a mainstream classroom with no help, and he's functional and he's learning. We're really grateful to all of the therapists. AJ would not be where he is without them, and we will never be able to repay the part of themselves that they gave to him to make his life better and to make our lives better.
Welcome back to Autism Live. That was Mission Possible, and I get misty when I see things like that because all progress is important, right? And obviously this young man is doing so well. And if you're not getting progress, if you're not seeing progress, I want you to examine what is happening. Sometimes you don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? I love that old expression, but you know, sometimes you got to look at things. It's exactly what we would teach our children, right? And that there are executive functions eventually to teach our children how to reach a goal. And we have to do the same things for ourselves. Say, well, if the goal is progress, and if we're not reaching the goal, if we're not seeing progress, then we got to look at it and say, why? Why aren't we seeing the progress? And in some cases, that means you're not with an ABA provider who is getting it done. Don't waste a year of your life and your child's life. If you're not seeing progress, you know, maybe you have an initial conversation with them and say, you know, why? How concerned are you? What are you doing about it? But if you don't get the answer you want, switch. But a lot of times there's just a little thing that needs to be switched, and hopefully your ABA provider is quality and is helping you with that. If you're doing this on your own, though, really important that you stop and look and say, well, have we gone about this the right way? I always use the example. I mean, my son had therapy from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I can tell you it's top quality. But even for my son, there were times when we would get stuck on a lesson and we just weren't seeing the progress. But what would happen is that a whole lot of people would be looking at it and manipulating one thing at a time to see how can we get this done. I always use the example when my son was in kindergarten. There's a day in kindergarten, by the 100th day of kindergarten, the children they need to be able to count to 100. And we had been working on it in class and at home and with a whole bunch of therapists, working. We weren't getting it. I was working on it in the car with my son. We were doing it in every possible configuration, trying it at different times, offering huge reinforcement. He just wasn't getting it. He could count to 20, but you know, somewhere around 23, 24, it would fall apart, and he could recognize what 40 was. He could recognize what 42 was. He just wasn't getting the progression. He wasn't getting the concept of it's the same 10 numbers, but you're just putting another number for the 10 in front. He wasn't getting it. And finally, it was literally the day before the day he had to know, and we had a clinic, and people had worked on it in a certain way, and finally Peter Farrig, who I know I talk about on the show, he's our autism whisperer. He said, hold on a second. And because he'd worked with my son, knows how my son thinks, and he sat down and did a really specific textural prompt for him, and he got it. And my son has had the counting to 100 ever since. But we had to change the stimuli. He needed a textural prompt to bring it all home. So we never want to just go, oh, well, you know, the child can't learn this. We got to figure out, okay, what do we need to do to make this happen? And then you get the progress, and you see this family, they weren't seeing the progress, and they made the hard decision and said we've got to go someplace else, and then they saw the progress. I love that quality ABA people always say it's never the child's fault if there's no progress. We have to change something. Love that. Okay, also, I mentioned that somebody had already written into the show and identified themselves by name, and I'm not going to share their name. And they emailed into us and said, I have Asperger's syndrome. I'm from Mississippi. I can't live on my own, can't drive, cook, etc. I have to have assistance. I live with my parents. I just want support on what I should do. I need something that would help me. And you know what? First of all, I love that you wrote into us, and here are some things that I noticed, and you can write and tell me whether you had help doing this. But the first time that you wrote to me and told me your name this morning, you wrote in on the live forum. and said what your name was and that you had Asperger's. And then once we were talking about that you could do other things, you went through a couple of different channels and emailed us. So what I notice is how capable you are. And if you were at a place right now where you need assistance, you know, and we all need assistance at some point, and that you're not driving and you are not cooking, okay, but I see that you can do computers. And write to me and tell me, you can write on the forum that you wrote the first one in this morning. You can write, because that's a little bit more immediate. And you can tell me if you had help this typing that in, because it makes a difference. It really makes a difference in your age and what you want to do. There are lots of different groups out there, and there's a lot of things online. So I'm going to ask you some questions about if you have anybody who works with you on a regular basis at learning new skills. And I'd love to know, and I'd love to have you write me back and tell me if there's already somebody who's working with you. If, because you're good at computers, from what I'm seeing, and help me if I'm wrong, because if somebody is helping you to figure that out, I'd like to know. But I'm wondering if there's any online groups that you belong to, if you've spent any time on the Spot, or another site like that that very specifically has chat rooms where you can talk to other individuals who have Asperger's or who are on the autism spectrum that are in your age range. There are, I think you said that you were a girl, I'm assuming. I saw the name, but I shouldn't assume. But for instance, for teenagers and young women in their 20s, there are groups springing up all over the place called Girl Power, where the girls get together on a regular basis and talk about things that they need to do and help each other with their strengths and their areas that they want to see some progress on. I like to remind people that, and I don't know what the laws are in Mississippi, and I should check that during the next break, but as insurance reform comes about, if you do have insurance reform in your state right now, it's possible that you could be having somebody work with you on a regular basis on goals. And my question is, do you want to be able to cook? Or would you rather spend your time working on computers? I know lots of adults who don't cook. They just don't. And I even know adults who don't drive that could, but choose not to. So not being able to do those things, if you don't want to, are not necessarily a huge problem. But I guess my question is, what would you like to do? What kinds of things would you like to do? Are you able to do adaptive skills? Are you able to dress yourself? Are you able to take care of yourself? Would you like to be able to? Would you like to be able to work a job? So those are my immediate questions, because it's very possible, if you can do this, it's very possible that you can do a lot of things with a little bit of help and support in learning how to do them. So don't finish the conversation with me. Let's keep talking. Those are my questions to you. Write back and tell me, and then I'll have a better idea of what we need to work on next. So it's the beginning of an answer with a bunch of questions, okay? But I'm really excited that you're writing in, and I'm really excited that you're here with us. All right, we're going to take a short break. You can write into me in the meantime, and then we're going to come back and do our academic tip about push-ins and pull-outs for our children, when we might do one versus the other. So stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And listen, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Every week, we like to give you an academic tip, something that sets your child up for success at school, because it's important, right? A great deal of it. If you're sending your child out the door to a school site, it's a lot of their day that they're gone. If you're homeschooling, it's a huge undertaking, right? Either way, we want to set our children up for success. And one of the things that we'll see is that, in not all cases, but in a lot of cases, our children need some extra support. They may need time with a speech and language pathologist. They may need occupational therapy. They may need adaptive PE, a whole host of things that might be offered to us within the school setting as part of our IEP, as part of our free appropriate public education, those services that they offer. But it's one thing to get an offer for those services, and it's yet another to figure out how they're going to be delivered and on what schedule. And a lot of times we'll hear the school site talking about a pull out or a push in. Does the speech and language pathologist come to class while the child is in class time and work with them within the classroom and within what the class is actually working on? Or does the child leave the classroom and go to the speech and language pathology room and work one-on-one or in a small group? Which of those is going to work the best for the child? And what I want to talk about today is how we determine what's best for the child. A lot of times, the first offer that a school will give you will be what's right for the child. Sometimes it'll be what's right for the school and won't necessarily fit the child's individual needs. And I had mentioned on the show the other day that I'm a big fan of, for my child, the push in, and I am adamantly opposed to the pull out situation, although we did do that in previous years. And somebody had written in and said, let's talk more about this. What are the considerations? So let's start right from the beginning. As we're looking at this, there are a couple of things that we want to keep in mind while we're making our decisions as a parent of what's going to be best for our child. First thing that we want to consider is, what are the priorities for the individual child? As you look at your child's skill set and where they're behind and where they need to get caught up, what kinds of things are your highest priority? Is your child academically behind? Are they socially in a place where we really want to see some improvement? Because it's literally their ability to socially communicate might be hurting their ability to access the curriculum. Is your child someone who is fine academically, they're caught up, but they have a lot of sensory issues and they get to a boiling point and at some point during the day where they can't focus because there's so much sensory going on? Or do they have other priorities? So really asking yourself, if I were going to rate these things of what's most important, where would social be? Where would sensory be? Where would academic be? And if there are more things on the list, list all of them. What's the hierarchy here? Because sometimes you're going to have something happen where you can work on 2 or 3 at a time, and sometimes you're only going to be able to have one. So which one do you want to choose? Plan that out for yourself so that you know where your priorities priorities are. I think when we get pushed around by other entities, it's because we're not 100% clear about what we need and what we want for our kids. So when we're clear, it makes it much easier to say no. That's not going to happen, which I'm queen of doing. Also knowing what are the time constraints, and I'm talking about what are the time constraints for you and your child. You know, when my son was in kindergarten, I did not want him taken out of his classroom, not once, not for a second, no way, no how, because he was going half day. So if he was there for half day, it was this one-shot opportunity for him to be working on academics and working on social stuff, and it wasn't so long that I felt that he needed to be pulled out for sensory issues. But there was we were having therapy in the afternoon, but there were unscheduled half hours where he could have speech, and he wouldn't have to be taken out of his class and miss something. So that was my focus in kindergarten. In first grade, that wasn't as much the case. So, you know, there were times when it was more appropriate for him to be pulled out. But what's the time constraint for your child? If they're going to kindergarten and they're there full day and then you're coming home and doing therapy, are you able to do things outside the classroom? Are you able to take them to OT at 3:30 in the afternoon? Is it going to work for your child? Are they going to be exhausted? So what are the time constraints? That has to be factored into this. And then, of course, the last one is what's possible, because you may hear from your school, well, we're just not going to do that. I think it's important to check the school's regulations. One of the things that we saw, we were told early on, well, the rule is, when I asked for the pull-out, to be done at a different time, not during instruction time, we were told, well, the rule is that these things have to be done during school time. And I said, show me where in the bylaws. I was able to look it up and see that that was true, that it was during school hours. And since my son was only going to school half day, it meant that he could have his speech immediately after school, or we would come back some days at 2:15 and he would have speech then. So it didn't take away from the other things that he was doing. It was the right choice for our child. And it was the right choice in keeping with what our school's rules were. You have to think about what's possible for you. Is the school, what are the rules for the school? And what can you get to, and when is somebody available? Because it's wonderful to sit there and say, well, my child has time to do APE, adaptive PE, at 7:15, and that's what makes the most sense for their program. But if there's no APE teacher that's available at 7:15, what use is it to anybody? Okay, so let's look at some considerations for both. For a pull out, this is when somebody comes to the classroom, picks your child up, and takes them someplace else to work on something with them. Now, when is that going to be appropriate? For a child who could benefit from a sensory break, this is ideal. If it happens to coincide and you can work to say, it would be really, we see that there's challenging behavior that happens at 2 o'clock. So it'd be great for my child to have a sensory break then, to go do some OT, kind of, you know, get to walk outside, smell some fresh air, do something different, and come back rejuvenated. Then that might be ideal for your child. Another reason why you might want to do a pull-out is if there's a priority skill that really needs to be worked on one-on-one in order to get progress. And sometimes there are. And you know, you can make the case, well, can they do it in the classroom? But that's a lot of distraction. If you were going to teach me physics, you would not want to teach it to me in a room full of screaming third graders, right? I wouldn't be very successful at it. So if your priority list has your child needing to do something that really requires one-on-one, and for this period in time, not for all time, but for this period in time, needs some quiet and some sensory free, you know, at least sensory taken down, not as much, then a pull-out might be ideal for your child. And of course, the last one, when it is the absolutely only way you're going to get services for a priority skill. You might think to yourself, well, I really wish that, and what would make more sense for my child is for it to be, you know, in a group setting. But if you can't get that negotiated with the school, and it's a priority skill, you got to work with what you've got, right? And be looking towards seeing if you're actually getting the progress, though, because if you're not, then you can say to them, we're not getting the progress, we need to do something different. Okay, what about for the push in? What are some considerations? When academic and social goals are a priority, you really want to consider the push in, because if the child is behind academically, taking the child out of the classroom to work on something that isn't a priority, to me, is nuts, right? And when a lot of times, hopefully you have a good teacher who says, well, this is a good time for the child to go out because we're not going to miss anything academically, but it's something that's social. And if social is a priority, man, you don't want your kid to miss that either. And then they come back and all the other kids got reinforced and got to play and do all these things, and your child didn't get the paycheck and didn't get the opportunity. Now they go on the playground and your child's got nobody to play with because the kids are all playing from the groups they were in before. Really have to be mindful of that. Really great to push. Here's a great reason to say to the school why to push for a push-in is if your child is demonstrating a skill in a certain, they've been able to do it in the one-on-one setting, but they're not demonstrating in the classroom, you can say to them, hey, we're working for fluency and generalization here, which means you got to do it in the actual setting. So let's have the support here, and there's a lot of things that they can do in the classroom. Quite frankly, if they're working on core strength, they can work on that while they're doing other things. They're trained to do this. If it's appropriate for your child, push for the push in, because it can be very beneficial for the children. And of course, the last one, when it makes sense. When it makes sense. If they're going to work on something that they're also working on in the classroom and your child isn't having sensory issues, it just makes sense. Do it in the classroom. Our kids are already ostracized enough. If it doesn't make sense, I don't care if it's more convenient for them to do it in their room. That's not what this is about. It's about what works for our children and getting progress across a whole bunch of things. So maybe they're more comfortable working on it, but that doesn't make sense. I've shared before that my son is still working on language things, but I have one of the best speech and language pathologists that there is, because I've expressed, well, we're not just working on language, we're working on language in a social setting. That's what my child needs. He needs more support socially than anything else. So to have him go down the hallway and be doing things with somebody one-on-one, not going to work. In the classroom setting, not going to work. It's too big. So we do lunch bunch, and 3 or 4 and it rotates, different kids get invited, the parents say it's okay, and they come and meet in the speech room during lunch and have a lunch date and play games, and it's supervised, and he's able to negotiate things, and they have different topics that they'll introduce to get them all talking. It helps him to make friends, it helps with his language, it helps with his social game. It's brilliant. It makes sense. So we always want to be thinking as parents about asking our schools and our support staff to have it make sense. So take some time, prioritize, and I think you'll find that it'll be really abundantly clear. And hey, by the way, for one thing, for speech, you might say, no, that makes sense to do a pull out for that. But for OT, it makes sense to do a push in. It's okay if they don't always match. It's what's best for your child that you want to be mindful of, and what's possible. But I know that you guys will see that this is really helpful, really, really helpful for your child to get the success that you want at school. Okay, we are going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to come back, and I've got another topic for you that I want to talk about in just a second. Stick with us.
My name is Rocky.
Autism used to affect 1 in every 10,000 children. Now it affects 1 in every 91 kids.
TACA is one of 5 organizations helping families living with autism today.
Our kids came back to life. There's a whole community out there, and now we're a part of it.
Oh, TACA has a place for me.
To find TACA, go to www.tacanow.org.
Please.
Welcome back. We like to share for you a DTT, NET, whatever it is, tip, depending on what it is, when it is. And we had a DT tip I can't talk today, a DTT, discrete trial teaching tip for you on Monday that we didn't get a chance to get to. And we kind of touched on it a little bit with Angela Persicki yesterday when she was in talking with us, that sometimes we'll be doing something, we'll have a teaching moment with a child, and the child will start to do a wrong response, the response that we're not looking for, or they may even attempt to do something that makes it impossible for us to finish the lesson, or they might even engage in challenging behaviors. So we do something from time to time that's called response blocking. And I wanted to take just a brief second to talk about it today since we didn't get to it on Monday. So it's response blocking. Imagine that you're sitting there with a child and you've put out 3 cards, and one of them's blue, one of them's orange, and one of them is red. And you say, give me red. And the child goes to pick up the blue one, right? Well, we could let the child pick up the blue one and put it in her hand and then say, that's not red, right? And get into a whole discussion, and the child is going to get frustrated, right? We could do that. We could let them make the wrong mistake, or we could response block. So we could say to the child, give me red, and we see the child going for the blue one, and we very gently, pull their hand back and maybe take it and go to the red one, right? So we're doing a physical prompt here. First, we're doing a response block, and then we're going to do a physical prompt for the red. So the child gives us red, and we go, that's red, good job. And we tickle them, we give them a reward. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So that's response blocking. But we also, if a child is, sometimes you can't get there, right? And this takes a little bit of finesse and a little bit of time. That, the child is already there and picking up the blue one, but what we really want to remember is that we want to be as efficient and effective as possible at getting to the reinforcement. So if you see that they're already there and they're already handing you the card because you fuzzed out for a second, we've all done it, right? We're not going to go through a big thing and putting it back and going, no. We want to do as minimal of a response, as if it didn't happen. You know how some people are like that, something happens, everybody's got an aunt or a grandmother, like somebody says something and they just gloss right over it. That's the skill we want here. If we've missed the response block, just gloss right over it and go to the other thing and say, give me red. Don't even say no, because we don't want this to be a negative. So it's not a thing where you're slapping the child's hand away and saying, no, not that one. Not at all. If I'm reaching for the wrong one, it's just a very gentle retract, and don't just push it to the other one. Retract, like we're starting over, and give the SD, which is give me red, and lead it over and go, yay! Because what we want to do always is get to that reinforcement. And if you need to, in some cases, you may do distraction. That if you see that the child is about to engage in something, let's say that the child is sitting there and you've put out the 3 things, and our kids are busy sometimes and they don't want to sit in the chair, and they're like, I want to go, I want to play with that toy, and they sprout hands and they're doing things, and you've said, give me red, and the child is already going off the chair. They're looking at the cat that just walked by and they're going towards the chair. Well, we can use distraction. As much as possible, we want to remember to get to the reinforcement, so we can use distraction and go to something that we know that the child likes to do. So if the child is reaching for the cat, we're not going to say to them, don't play with the cat. We're gonna go over and response block and make it harder for them to go under, but we're going to distract too and say, where's your nose? Or something like that to get their attention, so that we've distracted them away from the cat, and we very immediately say, give me red, and maybe do a physical prompt there. So it's always that thing of getting there beforehand, because it's like the spool of thread. If it starts to unwind, it takes that much more time to get it wound back up, right? So if you see the child's attention starting to drift, do distraction about, what do I have on my nose? And then give me red, right? Whatever it is. something that you can get them back on track and get back to the business of getting to the reinforcement. So it's not a negative. We're never doing the negative. If the child goes to hit you and you block the hand, it's not a negative. We don't go, don't you hit me. We don't allow that. If you hit me one more time, right? Not a negative. We want to distract when appropriate, not always. If the child's trying to hit you, then we're not doing anything. We're not going to do the distraction. But if they're squirming or something and it hasn't gotten that far yet, then we're going to distract them and get right back to the business at hand. And remember the goal. The goal is to get to the reinforcement always, as quickly and appropriately as possible. Okay, it's time for the 8 word. And we've gone off track this week, and we've been showing you the early episodes, but we had to show you the new episode. We did it yesterday, and we're going to show it to you again. I believe this is episode 41, and a young man who recovered from autism, Nick Yates, a fabulous, fabulous young gentleman, comes to their house to meet the family and to meet Jack Riley and to sit with the parents to talk about what he remembers about autism. Get the hankies out. It's a 4-hankier. But take a look at this and we'll talk about it when we come back. This is the A word.
Nick was diagnosed with autism in 1994 at the age of 4. He received 5 years of therapy from CARD that eventually faded out. Nick recovered from autism in 2001.
The song I'm about to perform is by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. CARD helped many patients, myself, to recover to this level now.
Cheryl and Mike's son, Jack Riley, was diagnosed with autism in 2010 at age 2. He's been receiving therapy from CARD for a year and a half. Today, Cheryl, Mike, and Nick meet for the first time.
I'm curious as to what you remember.
I certainly remember pretty long sessions, and I'd be frustrated if I would make mistakes. I mean, I remember one time I had to count a row of 6 blocks, kept messing up. That was really difficult.
Oh, I need it.
No.
I need it. I need it.
At what point do you recall hearing the word autism?
I was able to figure out what I was going through without anybody having to tell me.
Our concern is if it's a big secret to hide. I don't know what we can say.
No one ever told you, you just discerned
But the
it?
reason I'm comfortable talking about this is because I felt it. In therapy, I certainly began questioning why people reacted as they did based on what I said and did. Particularly because of difficulties I was facing in school. It got to a point where I wanted to understand why it was. So I entered while still going through therapy and still showing significant signs of the mental condition. Even after I'd improved to a significant extent, there were those who still gave me a hard time for it.
Did it hurt your feelings when you were in school, the way that kids...
Oh, absolutely, because it was bullying, it was harassment.
That scares us.
They called me names. I was basically, when it came to sports and PE, I was usually the last kid chosen.
Did teachers intervene?
Fortunately, not really. I mean, it was just so hard for me to talk about it because of how ashamed I felt. Certainly the first few years of elementary school, I don't think I really had the most supportive teachers. I mean, I remember my mom told me how my first grade teacher once said that she thought I had no chance of getting anywhere. And going away to college and out of state and being the only person from my old school district has made a difference. It's just really improved my social life tremendously because I got to be me, because with nobody knowing about my past, I wasn't faced with these misconceptions and prejudgments.
Do you tell people, new people that you meet?
No, that's not the first thing I will ever
No,
tell.
I would hope it's not the first thing.
You know what? In most cases, I never do, because while it's a part of my past, it doesn't define who I am. I mean, just thinking back to the very beginning, pretty much each episode, autism, what, not who.
I want to tell you right now, though, I'm so impressed with you.
Likewise.
I want you to know that.
Likewise. I mean, your son really inspires me just as much because I'll tell you anytime.
I adore him, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't challenging.
I mean,
it's cost me the stuff that like career things, goals. I don't care about those anymore. I work at night. I'm tending bar. Not that I'm too good for that. I'm just saying that's what I do. I want him to have a chance.
Right.
And you inspire me now.
Thank you. The feeling goes both ways. The feeling's mutual.
Before you leave today, we would like you to meet Jack.
I would love to.
This is Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hey, Jack Riley.
All right, should we try this? I'm gonna try to take a picture of all of you. 1, 2, and 3.
Jack Riley, you rock.
There are so many things about this show that I love. Can I just say what a cathartic thing it is for me where my child is right now, to look back and see all the things that the family is feeling and all the things that the child is going through, and to be able to remember that time and put it in a different context, because I was so worried when we were going through it. Please know how grateful I am for every single minute of therapy that we had, but this is going to sound weird. I didn't get to enjoy it. I didn't get to enjoy the gratitude of it because I was so worried about, was this gonna lead to this? Was this gonna, and I saw it working, but where we were gonna end up, I had so much worry and concern about everything day to day, and were we gonna keep a roof over our heads while we were doing it, that I didn't get to enjoy it. And that's a weird phrase to say, right? But there are things about it that are deeply, deeply enjoyable, especially the progress. My goodness. And I know that a lot of you out there can relate to me in terms of it's the worry and the fear and all the financial stuff and just everything in general. And I feel like I get to enjoy it this time watching them because I know all the good things that are going to come. But I deeply, deeply appreciate their honesty and to see the arc and appreciate it of progress. And I've said before, love, love, love the mom. She's like a Buddha. She's so centered and calm and asks such great questions, and she's, go with the flow, and I don't relate to that at all. To that even a little bit. But what I relate to is the dad. The dad is having all these emotions and frustrations, and he's, really, really feeling the angst of all of it. And man, it was the flip in our household. My husband was the calm, cool, collected, it's going to be okay. And I was, going, about everything. And so I love, 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 love this dad and his honesty and his emotion. And he sits there on the couch and says, I love that little boy, and I would do anything for him. But this, there's been a cost. There has been a cost, and it's not just the things going on with the child. It's been a cost to the family. It's been a cost to the dad in terms of how he saw himself and what he thought he was going to do. And I've been saying, I need to get an email off to this dad to say, but you're at this stage of it, and you can't see, and just like I couldn't, that this changes. We've had Nancy Alsbaugh-Jackson on here talking about that you do morph and you come out a better person and your life changes. I can remember saying to friends, I have lost all personal ambition. I have lost track of who I am. I don't know, I changed jobs so many times so that I could make it work with my son in therapy, and had identified myself as a certain, as an educator, and that I was going to be in classrooms again, and I was going to be teaching a certain thing, and it had nothing to do with autism. And, my life changed in ways that I couldn't foresee. I certainly never envisioned this. Am I incredibly grateful to be here? You betcha. And I know so many other people. Nancy Alsbaugh-Jackson actually does a presentation about how a lot of times we find ourselves on this journey. I've shared before the dad who was here with us on the show and is now writing a children's book, and he said, I didn't find my voice until my child didn't have one. So I know that there's good things coming for this dad, and that his life is going to change in a way that is absolutely unforeseeable. And I want to send that message of hope to all of you. If you feel like you've lost your sense of yourself on this journey, I want you to know that that's one of the steps along the way. You will find yourself again, and in a way that boy, you just never could have envisioned. Stick around for it because it's really kind of amazing, and it's not just me. I meet parents all the time. We had Lisa Ackerman in here. She did not think that she was going to be running an organization. And as I look at what you guys wrote to the questions of the day yesterday about if you had $1,000 to $5,000 grants, what would you do? It is literally a list of inspiration of all the things that I would love to live in a world where you guys got to do all of the things that you said you would do. Autism parents are amazing people, and they're capable of great things. And I don't think that we asked for this in our lives, but I think that once this happens in our lives, it forces us to step up in a way that maybe we wouldn't have before. And I see beautiful things happen when that happens. So check out the A Word, and I hope that you find the strength and the hope in it that I do. They have their own YouTube channel, and you can be watching the whole series. And whether you relate more to the mom or the dad or the family, any part of the family, it's an amazing, amazing journey, and it's being done really well. That's the A Word. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and he's going to be talking about some really exciting things that I know you're going to be excited to know about. Stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms. Detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity. Brief and visually appealing video tutorials. A variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm thrilled that it's Friday and that it's time to introduce Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He's with us once again, and you are the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
That's
and
correct.
You are also the director of the Autism Research Group, an amazing organization that is asking parents what they would like research done on.
That's correct, yeah.
I gotta say, I love that. I think that's an absolutely brilliant thing, a thing that's time has come. We've been talking a lot about research studies, and maybe later on in the show we'll have a time to talk about that. But you sent me a couple of really exciting things this week that I don't even know that you necessarily meant for us to talk about them on the show, but
just like to pass things on.
yeah, but they were really cool things, and I'd like to bring them up. In fact, this first one you sent, it's that somebody had passed off to you and said, you know, could be of use to people. Chuck E. Cheese, the restaurant that we're all
way too familiar with.
Yes, I was going to say more familiar than we'd like to be with. That is kind of an interactive experience for kids and can be a little bit of a sensory nightmare, but a lot of kids find it really, really reinforcing to go there. Yep. Chuck E. Cheese has done this very brilliant thing and offered free reinforcement calendars that are on a host of different topics. We have one here to show you that I chose this one just because I thought it was something that is most conducive to our kids, because there are a lot of strange topics that they cover, but it's a good eater, try new food calendar. All of them cover 2 weeks, and basically what it would be for this particular one is setting the parameters, saying if you try a new food once or twice or whatever the criteria is, I'll put my initials in here for every day in the 2 weeks, and then when it's done and filled in, the child gets to turn it into Chuck E. Cheese for 10 tokens, which is kind of cool that they're doing that. And now there is an asterisk here that it has to be at a participating one, so check before you do this and print this out, check that your Chuck E. Cheese is participating. We have the link to find all of these up on our Facebook page right now, and you're seeing it also on the screen in front of you. They do require you to make a food purchase, and I don't know whether it's a drink counts or what, but and it does expire at the end of this year. But there are a whole bunch of these charts available. There's even sports ones. There's one for nose picking. I mean, it's a random array of things.
And of course, you know, Chuck E. Cheese has a vested interest in this. They want to get your family in there to buy pizza and play video games and everything else. But it's nice when a marketing tactic actually has some benefit and use for families too. So
I have to say, I mean, it's kind of brilliant, and maybe more and more people will see the benefit of reinforcement.
Right, and you know what's interesting about, you know, we're always sort of battling these myths about ABA and ABA procedures, and the common myth is positive reinforcement has to be contrived, or token systems have to be really artificial and really, you know, like, oh, good job, here's your M&M, or here's your penny or your poker chip for your tokens. Well, this is a token system. Most people wouldn't think of it that way, but it is. It's, you know, there's you know, something that a kid earns each day that in itself has no value, except that after you get enough of them, you trade them in for something that does have value. Right? That's the essence of a token system. So, yeah, a kid has an opportunity to then go and do something in the community with peers and with other folks in the community that they actually value and that will be be a powerful motivator, you know, if the kid's ready for that and has enough verbal behavior and everything else for it to work. But yeah, it's nice. It's just basically another way to sort of build a reinforcement system into more of an everyday community activity.
Absolutely. And, you know, we've started offering templates here on the show for different kinds of things. We have the bedtime pass here that if you guys still want your version of the bedtime pass, it's just a template and all you have to do is cut it out. You don't have to laminate it like we did. I just love to laminate everything. It's a craft project. It's a little break from reality for me. It's a good thing. But, this has been working really well in my house. I will say that we had a little extinction burst the other night with this. So we had the behavior that we weren't wanting to see happen extra, and once we weathered it, it's been clear sailing ever since and been lovely.
And that's what you will always see with extinction bursts. By definition, they go away. They don't stick around. So.
Yeah, and it was horrible. Can I tell you, it was horrible. And I want to say that because whenever, you know, people talk about things being put on extinction, I remember once my husband and I really got what that meant, and it took us a while. But once we got what it meant, we would always go, because we would know there was going to be a difficult moment.
And unfortunately, that's how you kind of know you're doing it right, is if it doesn't feel right to you. I mean, it shouldn't feel right to you as a parent to not give your kid what they want. Yeah. Right? Obviously, you're a parent, you care about them, you care about their feelings, you want to nurture them, so you want to give your kid what they want. Yeah. But when they're having a challenging behavior, whatever the behavior is that you're trying to decrease and help them replace with a more appropriate alternative, but they're doing the inappropriate thing in the moment, that's when you don't want to give your kid what they want, or at least you shouldn't. Yeah. But it doesn't feel right. I mean, you feel like a little part of you is dying inside. I mean,
or
you
a criminal.
Really honestly do.
It was
you
like
feel like a criminal.
Pull the police car up and have me taken away, kind of thing. I mean, you know, and to put it into context for you guys, if you don't know about the bedtime pass, and my son gets 3. This is what we thought would work for him. He gets 3 passes. Anything after, and we were very clear with him about, you know, the lights are off now. You're on bedtime passes now. If you talk to us, if you get out of bed, if you turn on the light, you've got to turn in a pass first. And the first couple of nights, it was really textbook. The first couple of nights, it was brilliant, and he was so thrilled, and he didn't want to use any of them. And the behavior was nipped, and even my husband was saying, oh my gosh, can you imagine that this little thing could work this well, and we're not having to have conversations with him over and over and over and putting him back to bed. Fabulous, fabulous. And I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. And we finally, I think it was the 4th night that we were using it, he blew through all 3 passes. Because he kind of, you know, he's old enough. He wanted to see, where is this really going to go? What will really happen? Yeah. Absolutely. Of course. And so
good for him, you know?
Right. A sign of intelligence. Really as I'm, you know, in bed crying because... But I want you guys to know, you know, this is what happened in our house. And so he blew through all 3 passes very quickly. And we had talked with Angela about that if he got past the 3 passes and was talking to us, to, you know, that our plan for us in our house was we were going to turn off all the lights. We were going to go to bed, even if it was 8:15 for us. So there would be absolutely nothing to react to, because he would come downstairs and watch us watching TV. Right. And I want to get into that with him.
Difficult to put that into extinction. Extinction.
So we'd turn off all the lights, give him nothing to react to, go to bed. Well, I need my sleep, right? Go to bed, and eventually he'd go to sleep, and I could get back up if I wanted to. Yeah. But you know, make everything in the house quiet. If you know, so we were ready for this. And he started in, and my husband and I, all the lights are off. We go to bed, and he's in his room and crying in bed, going, "Mom, I need you to talk to me. Mom, why won't you answer me? Mom." No reaction until he went to sleep. And it took, Angela was asking me how long did it take. It took like 18 minutes for him to go to sleep. And I laid there in the bed thinking, you know, let the police car come and take me. This is the worst night of my life, you know, because you feel that way. And at one point my husband was like, my gosh, you are just so much better at this, because because he wasn't yelling dad, he was yelling mom, and he was like, I would be in there. And I said, no, I literally will sit on top of you. You're not going in there. We're not doing this.
Well, and you know, an interesting thing there is people are more likely to give in when their child is labeled with a disability. And I don't know why that is, but yeah, and you know, maybe there's an extra guilt factor for some reason, whatever it is. But your child understands the rules, and they're perfectly reasonable rules. You're not being mean. You're just saying you can only get out of bed 3 times. That's actually quite a bit still, right?
Yes,
it's not
it
like
is
you're,
a lot.
You're reading a story, you're kissing him goodnight, you're doing all the things that are reasonable for a kid.
Right.
And he understands all that. He's got the verbal behavior to get it. He understands all that. And so with a typically developing kid, it would be perfectly reasonable, right? Like, these are the rules, kid. You got to live by the rules. It's our house, you know. And yet, so often with a kid with a disability, we feel like there must be some other reason why we should feel worse about having high expectations. But of course, that's not the case. I mean, when you think about it, it's almost like reverse discrimination or something. Like we should feel more. But it's perfectly reasonable expectations. There's no reason why it'd be any different for a kid with autism or any other disability or a typically developing kid.
Right.
Here's reasonable household expectations. We're going to stick by them.
I think my thing is I just hate for him to be in any kind of pain. I want to spare him that. It's not the best teaching tool, but I want to spare him that. But he did stop crying, and he went to sleep, and now, the next morning, he woke up and he said to me, I never want to be without a bedtime pass ever again. And I said, and I never want you to be without a bedtime pass again.
So he's saving one now,
He's always, he rarely uses all 3. I need to ramp it down to 2, in fact, because he rarely, I think it was just the one night that he blew through all of them and then some. So, so extinction burst, and not fun for me or my husband, but we got through it. But important to be able to use these things to get to the behaviors that we want, and sometimes that is what's needed.
And he's going to be proud of himself, in the future.
He is.
That's the thing. You have to look forward to the future. He's going to say, wow, I'm a big boy now. I can go to sleep by myself. I don't have to get out of... So it will pay off in the end.
And it's already paying off. I've had more sleep. So
good.
And also, quite honestly, because I've shared before on the show that I turn into a raving, horrible, screaming person, that it's not, if I get that tired and it's 10:30 and he's still getting up and wanting to talk to me, I've already gone to sleep and I'm like, everybody leave me alone.
Sure, yeah.
I'm not in control of myself.
Is bad for everybody.
It's horrible. I'm, like bad parent stamped on my forehead. I literally will say, everyone, leave me alone. I don't care. Burn the house down. I don't care. Which I don't mean, but I'm like half asleep. I'm irrational. We can't have that. I know Child Protective Services is coming to my house right now as we speak. It's just yelling. And it's very short, and then I go back to sleep. In any case, I digress greatly. You also sent us something else, but I actually want to take a break and come back and talk about it. That was really cool. And so let's take a break, and we're going to come back and show you this new invention that Dr. Tarbox sent me a piece about. And if you have questions, we're going to show the video of it right now, and then we'll come back and talk about it. So take a look at this new cool thing that they're working on, and we'll be back with Dr. Tarbox after this short video.
21st century is the age of technology, the age of communication. More than 40 million people suffer from hearing and speech impairments. To communicate, they have to use sign language. Alas, very few people understand them, and they feel isolated. Our team has developed an Able Talk project to solve the language barrier between the sign language users and the rest of the world. A smartphone and a pair of our special sensory gloves is all that is needed. Now here's how our system works. The gloves capture the hand movements and transmit the movement pattern, the sign itself, to the mobile device. Then our application matches the incoming pattern with stored signs and plays the sound for that sign. The first part of the whole process is capturing the hand movements. This is implemented completely by our sensory gloves. To do this, we have equipped each of them with numerous flex sensors that capture finger movements, and a compass, a gyroscope, and an accelerometer, which are used to define the position of the gloves in space. These sensors gather raw data and then transmit it to the microcontroller. The microcontroller then normalizes that data and transmits it to a mobile device via the Bluetooth module. That's where the signs are being recognized and matched to the existing signs and patterns. When the pattern is recognized, the text equivalent of the sign is generated. Then, using Microsoft Speech API and Bing API, the sound is played via the mobile device sound system.
That's how we give voice to 40 million people. We estimate initial startup cost at $40,000, the base cost of our prototype of $20 per glove in mass production, and $200 per glove sales price. This is not future, this is reality. Enable talk, and the whole world will hear you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We were just watching the video with you. A really cool invention and part of a contest that Microsoft had a contest for inventions that would be helpful and useful, and a really cool idea. I think any time that we help any portion of the population communicate more effectively with the rest. I will say there's a part of me that goes, well, we should all just learn sign language. Why haven't we done that? And but I have not.
Right.
I mean, I did a little bit with my child, but why haven't I learned sign language?
Right. And of course, I think that there probably will be some pushback from the sign community saying, look, this is a legitimate language. We don't need our language translated into vocal speech. And of course, that's absolutely true. But at the same time, there's lots of it's helpful for folks to be bilingual, and if folks aren't bilingual, which most people in the world don't speak sign language still, so this might be one additional piece of help for folks who can sign but can't produce vocal speech.
Well, and when we think about in an emergency situation, if you needed to speak to someone and they didn't understand sign language, wouldn't you want to have the option of being able to say?
Yeah, it's just one option. It's not saying that sign language is less of a language or is not a legitimate language or needs help in any way. It's just, here's one more option.
Right, absolutely, which I think is really important. And we were just talking briefly during the break about, we're going to have Mark Serkin on Wednesday from Autism Speaks. There's a thing called the Makers Fair that's happening this next week in New York City, which I wish I could take my child to. If you're in the New York area, go Google it, Makers Fair. It's absolutely the most fascinating thing I've ever heard of. But Mark Serkin is going to be presenting on technology and autism, and we're going to have him Skype in with us on Wednesday morning at 10:15 to talk a little bit, give us a little taste and a bouche mouse of what he's going to be talking about there at the Makers Fair. Very exciting. Somebody has written in and said, I wish the schools would teach typical kids sign like they do Spanish and French. And before the economy was so bad, there were some schools that offered it as an elective for older kids.
As an additional language.
Right. But I've never heard of them doing it with the younger kids.
I believe some colleges and universities still offer that, right? But
absolutely.
It's pretty few and far between as far as I know, especially for younger kids.
Well, and in an era when, with the economy the way it is, that they're getting rid of anything and everything that's extra to the curriculum.
Except for sports.
Have you noticed that too? Although, quite honestly, at my child's elementary school, that is gone as well.
Really?
The teachers have to teach PE, in fact. The PTA pays for a person to come in and teach music, and that is the only thing outside the curriculum.
Right.
They offer supplementary things in the afternoon classes that a parent has to pay for, that that a child can do before a parent picks them up. And but yeah, there's no language. There's
everything's gutted.
Nothing extra. But certainly teaching sign language would be something that would be beneficial for all of us.
And one potential limitation to that glove thing that they've invented is I'm not sure if it can interpret. I think what they showed on the video was finger spelling, which is just one way of doing sign language. There's a lot of other ways of doing sign language, and so I wonder if they're programming that too, or if this is just a first start and then they're going to expand. Another concern is folks on the spectrum very frequently learn how to do modified signs that they and their community and their family might know and understand, but you'd have to program that sort of custom, you know.
Right.
So there's lots of different unknowns still, but it's just exciting to see group pushing, you know, the development of technology in that direction. I mean, they could be developing a million other things that would make them $1 million. They don't have to be helping people with disabilities communicate better. So it's nice to see movement in that direction.
Absolutely. I don't know if I've ever told you about one of the first times that we went to Disneyland. It was after my child had been diagnosed with autism, and we were in one of the stores outside Disneyland. It was very crowded. The park was closing. Lots and lots of people, and there was a child who had been a lost child. They hadn't found the parent yet. They were underneath a display, and the worker was having trouble communicating with the child, and the child kept running away. And I went up and was trying to be helpful, because I always think I can be helpful. I don't know why I think, you know, that I know anything, because I don't. But I went up thinking I could be helpful, and it was a child who was probably 8. And I talked to the child, and the child signed. And I said to the worker, oh, you know, you need to get somebody who understands sign language. You know, you have a deaf child who's here and who's signing. Yeah. And when the worker tried to talk to the child ran away. He recognized me as a mom, and so he was still going to try to have a conversation with me. And I didn't know enough sign. I didn't understand what he was saying. It never once occurred to me that he wasn't deaf, that he was a child on the spectrum.
Sure, could be.
It never, I mean, here I was with my child, and that, in fact, that was the case.
Is that right?
That was the case, and the mother came up, and it was a child who, non-vocal, new sign, and is somebody who elopes constantly. Apparently, it was like her 5th time that she lost him in the park that day, which was devastating to me.
That's scary.
Yes, and she was all matter of fact about it, like, oh, well, he just wanders away, which was so frightening to me. But I was so upset that it didn't even occur to me for a second. I just assumed, oh, well, the child has a hearing issue. Right. But he didn't at all. He was a child with autism, and you know. My whole world was autism, and didn't even occur to me. But yes, there are a lot of kids on the spectrum who use sign as a way to communicate. That's right. And adults who do as well.
And other developmental disabilities too.
As well. So a really cool invention, and thank you for sending us the clip.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back and pick up a little bit where we were last week. We were talking about these new guidelines that the
Behavior Analyst Certification.
Yes, I was going to say the organization that does the BCBAs, but it's all those letters. So they are the BA.
The BACB.
CB,
which
not
is the organization
BCBAs.
that does the BCBA certification.
Yes, you can see why I would have problems with that.
Yeah, it's a little confusing.
They have put out new guidelines that state specifically what quality ABA should look like
for kids on the spectrum. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we're going to come back and talk more about that after these messages. Stick with us.
My name's Matthias and I'm 8 years old. My brother's Christian and he's 10 and he has autism. What I like about Christian is his sense of humor. He makes me laugh a lot. The most fun I've been with Christian is when we go into the ocean and we play. When Christian and I are in the ocean, you can't really tell Christian has autism. Christian would like to swim across the ocean. It's hard for him to talk, and when it does, it's like it just comes out with not right. He has the words locked inside of him. Sometimes people stare and it's a little uncomfortable. At night, there's always a loud sound of Christian crying in the other room. It's one of the times that's hard to have a brother with autism. I would like the world to actually find something that could help Christian with his autism.
Visit autismspeaks.org.
Okay. We're back. I'm busy with computer stuff. I've said before I'm not the best with technology. We're all patient with me because of it. But in any case, we're back with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He is the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and you are the director of the Autism Research Group, an organization that you guys should all be familiar with, and you should tell us the website so they can go and do the survey for parents.
Sure. It's www.autismresearchgroup.org. Okay. And we're an independent, nonprofit research institute dedicated to doing research that produces real-life life improvements for families living with autism.
So if you've been sitting there and thinking, well, you know, I saw this study, I saw that study, nobody asked me what I thought they should be researching. Nobody ever asked me. I'm very fond of saying that. Well, somebody did just ask you. Dr. Jonathan Tarbox just asked you what you think, and all you have to do is go to that site and fill out the survey, and it counts. You guys make your decisions based on what you hear.
Yeah, we're designing programs of research based on parent request.
How wonderful is that? That's just absolutely fabulous. So you have officially been asked, you've been invited to the party. Now you can't sit there and say that anymore. Okay. So we were talking last week about this new set of guidelines that came out that specify what quality ABA therapy should look like for children with autism.
Right, and so there's a huge degree of variation in quality, right, between different treatment programs, different agencies, between different states in the country, and certainly between different countries in the world.
Yeah.
A huge degree of variability in how ABA treatment is implemented for folks on the spectrum, right? Different age groups, different intensities, different scope of treatment, etc. And basically, until now, you know, folks have basically been going by sort of their gut feeling or their clinical judgment or what they were trained to do by their mentor. There's been a few textbooks out there that sort of covered some of this, but no one has come out and said, here's the model, here's what it should look like, here are sort of the main elements you should be looking for in terms of ensuring a top quality program. And so the BACB has now released these guidelines a week or two ago, and they're very, very helpful. Of course, they can't cover every single detail, but it's a great starting point.
Okay, is it just me? Is it a little shocking that nobody has done this before?
The answer to that is kind of a long answer. If you go through graduate school in ABA and you get really good quality training in ABA, it makes sense that nobody did this, because it's not supposed to be a cookie cutter approach. It's not supposed to, you shouldn't, we shouldn't need this. And so a top quality ABA professional doesn't need this. This document is not for top quality, you know, top of the line trained ABA professionals. This document is for parents, and this document is for insurance companies. And so that will help folks sort of sort through the wheat and the chaff. So there's nothing on here that we haven't already thought of and we haven't already been implementing, right? But it's nevertheless, it's a very helpful document for the community at large.
So for you guys, this is a duh. You do this every day of the week anyway. I know you do it.
And in fact, we were already writing a document just like this.
Okay.
And then this comes out and we say, great, we don't need to now.
But this is more of an answer to those of us who've said, how do I tell? How would I tell?
Sure.
People ask us that all the time.
And insurance companies don't know what to fund. They're saying, well, do we fund 1 hour a week? Do we fund 40 hours a week? What kind of credentials should someone need to supervise an ABA program? What kind of credentials do they need to implement the ABA program? How do we know when the kid's done? How do we know how many goals the kid should be working on, et cetera? All these questions. And so this document was composed to address and answer some of these questions that are coming from insurance companies.
And so in that sense, it's very timely right now as more and more states are getting insurance. Okay, well, I feel good about that. I'm glad I asked. Okay, so where would you like to start? Because we talked a little bit last week about a couple of different things and things that an ABA program should have, and we're here at the chapter of it. And by the way, we should say that you can all download this for free.
That's right.
That we are
BACB.com.
Yes.
And it's on the homepage, and it says something about new guidelines, and you can
right at the
click
top
through and download the PDF for free.
Exactly. And so
I recommend all parents of folks on the spectrum have a look at this document.
Yes, and I've been slowly reading it, which is why we don't have the hard copy here for you, because it's in my car because I've been reading it.
And we should tell your audience as well that it's not written in boring scholarly sort of researchy language. This is written in real life, makes sense, practical language.
It's very accessible. And very wisely done that way, since that's the audience for it. Okay, so we're in the chapter that talks about clinical supervision and case management. You tell me when you want me to scroll what in terms you want to talk about.
So they give recommendations on basically every aspect of ABA you can think of. Again, not going into every single level of detail, but you know, good solid contribution in every major area. And so we talked about some of them last week. Now let's discuss briefly sort of what clinical supervision and case management of an individual's ABA program should look like.
Okay.
And the first thing that they mention is about half or more of what your supervisor does for your child's program should be direct observation of your child's program. Okay. So, you know, does your supervisor need to spend time doing case management and program development in the office? Yes, absolutely. But at least half of the time that they spend on your child's case should be looking at your child's case.
Okay,
so
important
actually
distinction.
being physically present.
Important distinction, though, is not half of the time that your child is in therapy, half of the time that the case supervisor
spends. So let's say your supervisor spends, 6 hours a week supervising your child's program. At least 3 of those hours, they should be observing your child in school, observing your child receiving therapy, running team meetings where your child is present and you're present, training you in your home with your child. All these different types of activities that involve working directly with you and your child.
Okay.
So if your provider is spending a lot more than 50% of the time just sitting at their desk, or, I'm sorry, your supervisor, that's a red flag. So direct involvement, direct supervision of what's really happening is something that is just necessary across the board in ABA programs.
All right, great, good to know. Okay, and we've got this lovely. Do you want to talk about this next?
Sure. Yeah, a little flow chart on what page is this?
We are on. I have no idea.
Doesn't matter.
We're on page 29.
Okay. So yeah, they put together sort of a flow chart that shows the overall progression from
and they're seeing it here on our screen too.
Excellent. From when your child enters their program to when they're discharged. So let's scroll up to the bottom, or to the top, sorry.
Okay.
And so the first thing that's going to happen when your child comes through the door of a good quality ABA clinic is they're going to conduct a variety of assessments, right? So if your child has challenging behavior, which most kids on the spectrum have some form of challenging behavior, they're going to do a functional assessment, right? Some kind of functional behavioral assessment of your child's challenging behavior. If your child needs to learn any skills, which of course pretty much everyone on the spectrum has some kind of skill deficits, and so they're going to need to do some kind of assessment of what skills are most important and appropriate for treatment. And of course they should talk to you as a parent. They should be asking your opinion, what are your biggest areas of need, and then they should also do some kind of comprehensive assessment of what your child can currently do. So here at CARD, and now publicly available, we have the CARD Skills Curriculum and Skills Index, which is the most comprehensive skills assessment in the world for folks on the spectrum. There's a variety of other systems out there. There's the VB-MAP, the ABLES. The most important thing, though, is folks should be doing, the ABA providers should be doing a skills-based assessment or curriculum-based assessment, not a standardized assessment.
Okay.
Standardized assessment is like a traditional psychological test, like an IQ test, let's say, that gives you an idea of how your child compares to the average population of children of the same age, but it doesn't tell you specifically what to work on.
Okay.
So if I say your child has a verbal IQ of 70, that definitely indicates they have some catching up to do in language development. But what do we teach? Do we teach requesting? Do we teach labeling? Do we teach conversational skills? Do we teach assertiveness? Do we teach prepositions, shapes, colors, numbers? Where are the holes, right?
Yeah.
And so a curriculum-based assessment will tell you specifically what exact skills your child needs to work on. And so that's critical. And that should be part of every top quality ABA program as your child comes in the door.
This is really interesting because we've had a parent that I've been talking to this week that said, I've got a child who's 15 on the spectrum. We didn't do ABA before, thinking about starting it now, concerned about funding, but in a state where they have insurance reform.
Great.
And but it's only this lump sum of money, and I don't know that that's enough money.
Right.
And I said, of course you don't, because how could you know? How could you know if that's going to be enough? And that it's really important first thing out the gate to get a full assessment of where your child is at. So I'm not barking up the wrong tree here. And because, and I think it's important to get an assessment from somebody that you trust that's going to give you an assessment of actually what your child needs, where they are, and not in relation to how much money you have or how much funding you have or how much insurance you have.
Right, and that's it's an important detail that you point out, because what a lot of funding providers will do is ask the ABA agency to make recommendations that fit with the funding that the funding provider is willing to give. So we want you to recommend about 5 to 10 hours a week, because that's all we're going to pay for anyway. So if you recommend more than that, you're just going to make the families mad. And what we say, and what any ABA provider with good integrity should say, is we're going to make recommendations based on what's clinically appropriate and based on what's been proven to work in research. We're not going to make recommendations based on what you want or what funding is available. And will that frustrate the families sometimes? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But would it be better to lie to the families or mislead them? No. no, obviously not.
Well, and I was saying the other day, it's like, you know, if your doctor writes you a prescription and says you need to take this many milligrams of penicillin over the next 10 days, they write you the prescription. They don't say how many pills can you afford.
Right, and then I'll write you a prescription.
Right,
Yeah,
and so you take the prescription to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist says it's going to be $24.95, and if you only have $12, you have to make a value judgment there about what you're going to do.
Right.
But you know, I want to know.
Right.
You know, don't tell me that you're going to give me a prescription for something that isn't going to work and have me pay the $12 and have it not work, which I know a lot of families have had that happen.
That's right.
So really important that you get that independent assessment that is not tied to the funding, so that you know where you are. And then, you know, I mean, and sometimes it is frustrating, but at least you know what you're facing in that moment. And I think that that's key for families.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's just a basic issue of integrity and honesty with your clients that you're serving as an ABA provider. As any kind of healthcare provider, you shouldn't be misleading your clients just because whoever's paying for treatment wants you to. That's crazy. It doesn't, you know.
And a lot of what had been happening over the last couple of years was that if you went to go to get an assessment, it was thousands of dollars.
Right.
And so what people did was did the assessment, had the school do an assessment, or had in California have the regional center do an assessment because that was the funding agency. But what happened was that sometimes you got a result back that you didn't know whether it matched what they could give, or if it was what was actually true for the child, and it leaves you with that doubt. So I think, if possible, and now with insurance paying for it, you should have some leeway about who you can get the assessment from. Hopefully it will lead to you being able to get an assessment that isn't tied to the funding source. All right.
All right.
We should probably take a let's take a short break, and we'll come back and continue on talking about, I'm sorry, and I always get sidetracked by things,
problem.
But let's take a short break. We'll be back more with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox after these messages.
I am Karen Driscoll. I'm a Marine Corps wife and mother of 3. My oldest son has autism. The strains on our typical military families are extraordinary. You add on the challenges of autism, access to care issues, and at times having to pay for effective treatments, and these families are pushed to the brink. We've lived in 5 different homes. That means 5 different medical communities, 5 different school districts, and 5 different state-run programs. The biggest challenge I face as a mother is going from bottom of wait list to bottom of wait list, never getting access to the effective services our children require. I feel like I'm constantly fighting for these services. We are working on a bill in Congress called the Caring for Military Kids with Autism Act that works to true up these policy deficits. You ask any service member overseas today, what can we do for you? They will always answer, please take care of my family at home.
Visit autismspeaks.org.
Here we are. Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. We've been talking about these new guidelines put out by the BACB. Did I actually get it right?
You got it right.
Oh, wow. About quality ABA therapy programs for individuals on the autism spectrum. Guidelines really meant for insurance companies and parents to be able to look at and understand so that we know what expectations for quality ABA would be.
And I should say, too, to your audience that anyone who's sort of more of an entry-level ABA provider or maybe new in the field, this would be, or maybe grad student, this is a great resource to outline sort of what you should be working towards as you develop your expertise and become an independent professional. This is what it should look like when you're developing your independence. Unfortunately, there are quite a few providers that were started by people who never were trained beyond entry-level status, and then they become a clinical director, and so they honestly never even knew what top quality supervision of treatment looked like because they never did it and they were never trained. So here's a nice document for those folks too, and frankly for schools who are trying to implement intensive ABA programs within their school setting. Here's a great document that shows this is what it should look like. This is no different if it's done in a school, in a treatment center, in a hospital, in the home. It's a great roadmap for anybody.
Okay, really important to know, and so important for the parents because you need to understand what the criteria is, whether you're getting the quality ABA therapy. With insurance, it's going to be important that you know so that you don't get one of those ABA providers that does not know what they're what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, so we were looking at this graphic. We talked about assessing our children.
We didn't get past the first bullet. So, so conduct a comprehensive skills assessment that identifies just which skills need to be developed in this child's development, and then make goals. That's the next bullet. Develop treatment goals that prioritize. So pick a few of those skills, maybe 10 to 15 of those skills, depending on the intensity of the program, and say, here are the skills we're going to teach. Here are milestones that we set and targets that we set. Goals, that we set over the next 12 months, let's say. We're going to teach, these 12 or 15 different skills, Then get into treatment, directly observe the treatment, so the supervisor should be there actually observing. We talked about this a little bit already. Meet and evaluate performance of behavioral technician staff. So the ABA supervisor needs to be giving feedback to the staff, the therapists or tutors or technicians, whatever you want to call them, the direct care staff. The ABA supervisor needs to be giving feedback to these people on a regular basis, a minimum of every 2 weeks. Really, ideally, it should be every week. If it's in a school or center-based setting, it could be every day. Every day the supervisor drops in for 2 minutes and observes and says, oh wow, you're doing a great job providing reinforcement, or oh hey, you could be a little bit quicker with this, or oh hey, don't forget to minimize distractions, etc. So ongoing regular performance feedback. We know from 50 years of research in performance management that that's how you make excellent performance and you ensure excellent performance. So you got to have that. Monitor treatment integrity, that all falls under the same boat.
Did I scroll down too far?
No, you're good. No, you're good. Adjust treatment protocols based on data. I mean, this I cannot emphasize enough. So the heart and soul of ABA is watching how what we do makes learning happen. That's ABA. We do something, and that's supposed to cause learning, And so if you're the ABA supervisor, you're looking out for that, right? You're putting the program under a microscope, looking for how is what we're doing having an effect on the child's learning. If it's not, if you're not seeing an immediate and substantial increase in the child's ability to do whatever it is you're trying to teach, then you're not doing it right, and so something needs to be changed. Check reinforcement, check treatment integrity, check establishing operations, you name it. There's a million different things that a good quality ABA supervisor is trained to know how to manage and analyze. And so every minute of every day they're thinking and worrying about that. Like, what do I need to change? What do I need to adjust? And so they're doing that constantly.
But again, the philosophy that you guys always share is it's never the child's fault.
That's right.
It's always something else that needs to be changed. It's not the child.
Exactly right.
I love that. That's so hopeful for all of us. It's a wonderful thing.
That's just how we look at the world.
Well, and that's a great way for all of us to look at the world. It's not their fault, but we can change something to make it better.
It's within our power to make a change happen for the child.
That's very empowering. It's a lovely, lovely thought.
All right. Let's see. Evaluate risk management and crisis management. That's another critical factor, especially for folks on the spectrum who might have more challenging behavior or more dangerous behaviors like running away or self-injury or eating inedible objects. The ABA supervisor needs to be making an assessment on a regular basis of, are we safe here? Is everyone safe? Is the child safe? Are they going to hurt themselves? Are they going to hurt somebody else? Are they going to damage property? And what can we do to mitigate those risks and to ensure safety? Critical piece.
Wonderful. And then oversee is the last.
Oversee.
That's on there. Oversee.
Oversee. Right. Yes. So that's part of this whole part of this whole process.
That they need to be overseeing the whole thing.
That's right.
Having somebody driving the bus is what I always say. Because in terms of this, I couldn't drive the bus. I know that there are parents that are out there that are doing skills because on their own, and because that's all that they have the opportunity to. And I want you guys to know you're my heroes, because I know I couldn't have done that. But having somebody quality who really gets it, design the program, drive the bus. I want to be a really good person on the bus that understands where we're going. But that, I love this criteria that sets it up so that if you are having ABA in your home through an ABA provider, that you can have something else to look at and know whether you're getting the real deal or not. And this clearly defines that.
Yeah, it's at least taking steps towards giving sort of the major criteria or the major structure of what it all should look like.
Really important. And if you haven't started ABA, to look at this and know, okay, this is what it should be and what it should look like.
Yeah, that's really worth saying to your audience, is if they have a child on the spectrum who might benefit from learning some new skills and they haven't tried an ABA program, they should definitely read this document, because this will tell you what an ABA program looks like, a good quality program. And I think what you'll find is because it's much more comprehensive, much more carefully controlled, much higher quality than just about anything else you do ever, anywhere. It's the level of attention to detail and the obsessiveness that goes into making sure every aspect is just right. You don't see anywhere else. So I think...
and get a sense of how not cookie cutter it is, too.
That's right. It's all individualized.
That it's all, even when you were saying about, so we're going to come up with this individual child, take a snapshot of where they are, where the holes are. We're going to target this set of lessons. We're going to check to see if these things are working, and if they're not, we're going to change something so that we're not going to give up no matter what. I mean, it's all individualized at every step along the way.
That's right.
For the child. Really, really amazing. We're out of time, but I thank you so much always for your input, and we'll have you... Yes, I know. She was saying no time to get you out of here, and I know that. We're just gonna finish out the show here. But I want to thank you and remind everybody that they can go to the Autism Research Group and be filling out those surveys so that you can have an input. And that if you have questions for Dr. Tarbox about anything research related especially, that you can send them at any point during the week. We're going to start to cycle through some of the different ways that you can get a hold of us so that you can let us know. You don't have to wait till Friday to ask a question. You can email a question to us on Wednesday that we'll let him know ahead of time that he's going to cover here on the show. And you'll be back with us next week talking about more things. And sometimes somebody even puts in a request on Tuesday and says, I really wish you would talk about this, and I let you know, and then we can talk about that on Fridays.
Absolutely.
So it's not coincidence when that happens. It's because we converse about that a little bit. In any case, we're towards the end of the program. I want to remind all of you that we've got really exciting shows coming up for you next week. A lot of stuff that you guys have been writing in and saying. I know I hadn't necessarily shared this with you. We've had a lot of people writing in and saying, I say at the top of the show, we're here for parents, teachers, and practitioners, for them to be more efficient, more effective, working with a child on the spectrum to reach their fullest potential. And a lot of people have been writing in and saying, hey, what about us, the teenagers and the adults on the spectrum?
Great. Awesome.
That they're wanting to be able to help themselves.
Fantastic.
Especially the teenagers talking about social things and where do I go from here. And so we're going to be tailoring a lot more segments to you specifically about the kinds of things that you can do to be able to help yourself. And we're going to have some interesting books and some authors Skyping in with us in the coming weeks about some of the topics that you might particularly be interested in. So interesting. But if you have research that you would like to have done because you're a teenager or an adult on the spectrum, that's another, you absolutely, it's not just for parents, but
that's right.
You can also write to the Autism Research Group. And
we have a variety of sort of community outreach and support services that we're developing too. And so if folks have see a need for something like, hey, no one ever helped me out with X, Y, and Z, we'd like to hear about that because that might be something that we can help actually establish.
Wonderful. So there you have it. You have officially been asked. What's your opinion? What would you like? What do you need? We're always about that here. I hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend. I know I'm going to run up to the roof to see if we can see the Challenger as soon as we're done.
Now?
It's supposed to be somewhere in the skies above us right about now. So it might literally be flying by the building. We can Endeavor.
That's spooky, huh? Challenger.
Yes. Yeah. So there we have that. But want to remind all of you to join us next week. We'll be here from 10 a.m. to noon, Monday through Friday. And we appreciate through the weekend all of your comments, suggestions, questions, gripes. Tell us if there's something that we're doing here that you don't love. All of that's important to us. But we'll be back on Monday at 10 a.m. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.